Listen to me carefully. We are living in a generation where everybody is talking, posting, arguing, explaining, and announcing, but nobody is listening. Everybody is loud, yet very few are powerful. And I came to tell you tonight, the next level of your life will not respond to more noise. It will respond to silence. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain yourself to people who already decided to misunderstand you. You don't need to announce your next move before God finishes building it. In 2026, the loudest voice in the room will no longer win. The wisest silence will, because silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is restraint. Silence is maturity. When you stop reacting, you start reigning. When you stop arguing, you start ascending. And when you learn when to be quiet, heaven learns when to move on your behalf. Some of you have been leaking your power through your mouth, talking to the wrong people, explaining to the wrong spirits, reacting to the wrong situations. But tonight, I came to announce a shift. You are stepping into a season where your silence will speak louder than your struggle ever did. Tell your neighbor, silence is my new power. Some of you are losing battles you were never meant to fight because you talked too soon. You announced what was still in incubation. You shared what was still fragile. Vision is not just about what you see, it's about what you protect. Anything in its early stage cannot survive exposure. A seed does not grow in the light, it grows in darkness. And the same way, what God is developing in you requires covering before it requires clapping. Every time you open your mouth to the wrong people, you remove the soil from the seed and then wonder why nothing is growing. There are people who love you but cannot handle where you're going. There are ears that are too small for the size of your future. When you speak too early, you give people permission to place their fear on your faith. They project their limitations onto your destiny. They start questioning what God already confirmed. And if you're not careful, their doubt becomes your delay. Silence is not hiding. Silence is safeguarding. It is you standing guard at the gate of your purpose saying, not yet, not here, not now. Vision attracts opposition before it attracts provision. The moment you speak it, resistance rises. You don't even need an enemy. Sometimes familiarity is the greatest threat to greatness. People who watched you struggle are often uncomfortable watching you evolve. They remember the old version of you and try to negotiate your future down to your past. That's why silence becomes your shield. You stop arguing with opinions and start aligning with purpose. You stop convincing people and start conserving energy. When God is preparing something big, he often does it quietly. Jesus spent 30 years in silence before 3 years of manifestation. David was anointed king, but returned to the field. Joseph dreamed loudly and paid for it with a pit. The lesson is not that dreaming is wrong. The lesson is that timing is everything. Not every revelation is meant to be released immediately. Some things are revealed for preparation, not proclamation. Silence gives vision time to mature so that when it speaks, it doesn't whisper, it roars. In 2026, you don't need to post every move, explain every decision, or defend every choice. The more valuable something is, the more security it requires. You don't leave gold lying in the street, you lock it away. Your vision is spiritual currency, and silence is its vault. When you protect it, it grows stronger. When you guard it, it gains clarity. And when the time is right, you won't need to announce it. Results will introduce it for you. Silence is not absence. Silence is alignment. It is you trusting that what God started in secret will speak in public without your help. When you learn to protect your vision with silence, you stop bleeding potential and start birthing promise. Enemies are clever, but they are also predictable. They watch, they listen, they wait for you to make a move so they can counter it. They thrive on reaction, on explanation, on overexposure. When you explain too much, when you justify yourself, when you react to every provocation, you give them a map to your mind, a blueprint to your weakness, and a key to your delay. Silence confuses them. Silence frustrates them. Silence takes away their ability to manipulate the narrative because the narrative is no longer in your hands. It is in God's hands. Some of the fiercest battles are won not with force, but with stillness, when you stop responding to provocations, when you stop giving energy to opinions, when you stop clarifying every misunderstanding, you create a kind of chaos for your opposition. They do not know what you are planning. They do not know where you are headed. They cannot anticipate your next move. And that confusion is power because it takes them off balance. Your enemies cannot fight what they cannot read, and silence becomes the strategy that blinds them. The world wants you to talk your way through every attack, to argue, to prove, to justify. But talking is not always strength. Sometimes your strength is measured in restraint, in holding your tongue, in letting the situation unfold while you remain still. Every time you react, you validate the existence of the challenge. Every time you explain, you give your enemy a foothold. But when you are silent, you make them wonder. They start questioning themselves. They start doubting their own ability to affect you. They begin to lose control, and you begin to rise in authority. There is power in mystery. There is power in unpredictability. When you stop giving people access to your plans, your dreams, and your strategies, you force them to operate in the dark, and God often works best in the dark. The very silence that frustrates your enemies also creates space for divine intervention. While they are scrambling to understand, while they are trying to manipulate, while they are trying to predict, God is moving on your behalf in ways they cannot anticipate. Some of you have been losing battles because you thought you had to explain yourself to everyone. You've been too transparent, too reactive, too eager to be understood. But God is teaching you a higher way. The way of the wise is the way of silence. The way of the strategic is the way of restraint. The way of the powerful is the way of listening, observing, and waiting for the right time to act. And when that time comes, when God gives the signal, your enemies will be powerless to stop what was always meant to succeed. Silence is not weakness. Silence is armor. Silence is the weapon that disarms your opposition without lifting a hand. And in 2026, the ones who master the art of quiet strength will rise above the noise, above the manipulation, and above every attempt to derail their destiny. Those who understand that less talking and more trusting equals more power will discover that their silence is the loudest voice in the room. Every time you react to a situation, every time you respond out of anger, fear, or pride, you give away something precious: control. Emotional reactions are powerful, yes, but they are often dangerous when they are unrestrained. They can hijack your mind, derail your purpose, and make you vulnerable to forces that want to see you stumble. When you withhold your reactions and practice silence, you reclaim authority over your own life. You set the terms of engagement, and you refuse to allow circumstances or people to dictate your inner state. Emotional control is not just about keeping your cool. It is about safeguarding your destiny. Many of us have been trained to react. From a young age, we learn to respond to insults, to attacks, to misunderstandings. We think that reacting proves strength, but often it proves only exposure. Every time you argue back, every time you defend yourself, every time you explain your actions to someone who does not understand, you allow external events to rule your internal world. You give away power to whoever has provoked you. And the more you do it, the less authority you have over your own life. Silence changes that equation. Silence interrupts the pattern of reaction. Silence allows you to observe without being manipulated, to reflect without being pressured, and to respond only when it aligns with purpose rather than emotion. Emotional control is not suppression. It is not denial. It is mastery. It is the ability to feel without losing your footing, to acknowledge without overreacting, to experience without surrendering your peace. When you speak in haste or act out of impulse, your enemies, your critics, even your friends can exploit your volatility. But when you pause, when you allow silence to be your first response, you create a buffer between provocation and action. That buffer gives clarity, and clarity produces authority. It allows you to act with intention instead of instinct. Some of the greatest leaders in history mastered silence because they understood its power over the self. They knew that true strength is not in winning every argument, but in choosing which battles to fight. They knew that the mouth can betray what the mind has carefully built. Emotional restraint is a weapon that deflects attacks, preserves energy, and conserves focus. Every time you practice silence in moments of potential conflict, you reinforce the truth that your life is governed by your choices, not by the whims of others. In 2026, the world will reward those who can maintain composure in chaos, those who can remain unshaken in the face of provocation, those who can observe without reacting impulsively. When you stop reacting to every trigger, you reclaim your power. You become the authority in the room. You are no longer a passenger in your own life. You are the driver. Your emotional state becomes a reflection of divine discipline, a signal that you are no longer enslaved by circumstance. Silence strengthens emotional control because it turns reaction into reflection, impulse into wisdom, chaos into clarity. It allows you to measure your steps, protect your peace, and conserve your power for what truly matters. When you master the art of emotional restraint, you stop being moved by the noise around you and start moving with purpose toward the destiny God has planned for you. When you speak less and listen more, something extraordinary begins to happen. Clarity begins to emerge. The world is full of distractions, and every word spoken without purpose scatters your focus. People want your opinion, your explanation, your reaction, but most of the time, their noise drowns out the voice of wisdom that is already inside of you. Silence is the environment in which insight grows. When you stop filling the air with unnecessary words, when you stop responding to every comment, every criticism, and every temptation to defend yourself, you create space for understanding, for revelation, and for divine direction. The quieter you are, the more clearly you can hear the whispers of purpose guiding your next move. Every day we are bombarded with opinions, advice, and distractions. Social media, office politics, family debates, unsolicited advice from friends, it never ends. And when we react to every impulse, we exhaust ourselves, we scatter our energy, and we cloud our judgment. But when we practice silence, we filter out the noise and make room for wisdom. The act of holding your tongue forces your mind to slow down, to weigh options, to see the bigger picture. Silence allows you to separate what is urgent from what is important, what is reactionary from what is strategic, and what is temporary from what is eternal. In silence, your decisions are no longer impulsive, they are intentional. Wisdom often comes in subtle ways. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It does not arrive in loud bursts. It comes in stillness, in the space between events, in the pause that allows you to process what is truly necessary. When you talk too much, you risk misunderstanding the lesson that is being presented. You risk reacting before reflection. You risk missing the signs, the opportunities, and the guidance that could propel you forward. Silence sharpens your perception because it trains you to observe, to listen, and to understand before acting. In 2026, the world will move faster than ever, and the temptation to react will be constant. But those who master silence will be able to move with precision while everyone else is stumbling in chaos. Silence is not inaction, it is preparation. It is the cultivation of discernment. It is the alignment of thought with purpose. When you learn to pause, to consider, and to allow stillness to guide your response, you stop wasting energy on fruitless arguments, futile explanations, and unnecessary conflicts. You conserve strength for the moments that truly demand action, and your impact becomes exponentially greater. There is power in listening more than speaking. There is power in observing more than reacting. There is power in allowing your mind to process before your mouth moves. Silence accelerates wisdom because it gives your brain the space to connect the dots, to recognize patterns, and to anticipate outcomes. It allows you to respond with insight rather than emotion, with strategy rather than impulse, and with clarity rather than confusion. Those who speak less often hear more, understand more, and act more decisively. In silence, the voice of God, the voice of reason, and the voice of opportunity all become louder than the clamor of the world. Mastering this discipline will set you apart, elevate your decision-making, and position you for success beyond what noise could ever produce. When you stop reacting and start listening, you begin to move with divine precision. There is something magnetic about a person who knows when to speak and when to remain silent. Silence creates a presence that cannot be ignored, a weight that commands respect without demanding it. People are drawn to those who measure their words because there is an aura of authority and restraint. When you stop trying to explain, justify, or defend yourself at every turn, you suddenly become mysterious to others. They can no longer predict your reactions, anticipate your moves, or manipulate your responses. And in that mystery, power grows. The less people understand, the more they respect, the less predictable you are, the more influential you become. Many of us have been too transparent with our thoughts, too open with our plans, too eager to prove ourselves. But transparency does not always equal credibility, and overexposure often diminishes influence. When everything about you is visible, when all your cards are on the table, people stop paying attention because there is nothing left to wonder about. But when you hold back, when you allow silence to guard certain truths, people begin to value your presence more, seek your opinion more, and recognize the weight of your words when you finally speak. Silence creates anticipation, and anticipation magnifies impact. Respect is cultivated in moments of measured restraint. The world respects those who do not chase approval, who do not react to every slight, who do not feel compelled to respond to every criticism. When you stop explaining yourself, you communicate confidence and self-assurance. You communicate that your life is not dictated by the opinions of others, that your authority comes from within, and that your power is rooted in purpose rather than performance. People begin to notice that your silence is not emptiness. It is intentional, strategic, and grounded in strength. Mystery is also a form of protection. When you do not reveal everything about yourself, you guard your life from unnecessary interference. People cannot sabotage what they do not understand. Enemies cannot strategize against what they cannot predict. Even friends learn to approach you with respect because they sense that you are not available to be manipulated. Silence builds boundaries without confrontation. It creates a space where you control access to your life, your thoughts, and your decisions. Those who respect this space will be drawn closer, while those who do not will fall away. In 2026, the world will reward those who understand that power is not in being the loudest voice, but in being the most discerning presence. The person who speaks selectively will find that every word carries weight. Every statement becomes significant. Every action is noticed. Silence, in this sense, is not absence. It is strategy. It is a way of commanding attention, earning respect, and building influence without needing validation from anyone. Those who master the art of measured speech and intentional silence become leaders in ways that words alone could never achieve. Their presence commands rooms, their opinion carries weight, and their authority is recognized even in their quietest moments. Silence does not make you invisible. It makes you formidable. It allows people to see that your life is governed by purpose, not by noise, and that true power often rests in the pause between words. There is a profound truth that many fail to understand. When you stop defending yourself, you make room for God to fight on your behalf. So often, we exhaust ourselves trying to justify, explain, or protect our reputation. We argue, debate, and clarify, thinking that if we speak enough, we can control the outcome. But the truth is, the louder you try to defend yourself, the more you reveal how much you are trying to control what only God can handle. Divine intervention does not need your negotiation. It does not need your arguments. It responds to faith, patience, and the courage to trust God's timing over your own explanations. When you are silent, when you stop defending your life, your decisions, and your dreams, you are essentially saying, God, I trust you to handle this. And that trust unleashes power. Heaven begins to move in ways that human reasoning cannot predict. People who once opposed you, situations that seemed impossible and doors that were closed suddenly shift because the fight is no longer yours alone. By defending yourself, you limit the scope of God's work because you are trying to do with human strength what only divine power can accomplish. Silence invites God to step in and demonstrates your faith in His authority over your life. Many of us have been trapped in the cycle of proving ourselves to the world. We respond to every criticism. We justify every choice, and we clarify every misunderstanding. But what if your silence could speak louder than all your words? What if withholding your defense could actually accelerate your breakthrough? When you stop reacting, you stop giving power to the forces that oppose you. When you stop explaining, you stop validating the doubts of others. And when you stop defending, you allow God to intervene in a way that transforms your situation beyond what you could have imagined. Divine intervention often works best in the quiet. It moves silently, mysteriously, and sometimes dramatically, but always purposefully. When you are busy defending yourself, you are in the way of your own blessing. You are entangled in the fight rather than letting the fight be fought for you. But when you release the need to justify, when you let go of the need to convince, and when you step back in faith, you create space for miracles to occur. Your silence becomes a signal of trust, and God responds to trust with action that human wisdom cannot produce. The world wants to see you constantly explaining, proving, and defending, but the kingdom operates differently. In the kingdom, power is revealed in restraint, influence is displayed in patience, and victories are manifested in faith. Every time you withhold a defensive word, every time you pause instead of reacting, you are giving God the opportunity to show himself mighty on your behalf. Your silence is not weakness. It is an invitation for divine strategy to unfold. In 2026, the greatest breakthroughs will come to those who understand that their battle is not theirs to fight alone. When you stop defending yourself, you activate a higher power. When you step back from argument, you step into alignment with purpose. When you trust God with the things that threaten to overwhelm you, you create a pathway for intervention that cannot be hindered. The quiet act of faith becomes louder than any explanation, more effective than any argument, and more powerful than any human effort. When you learn to stop defending yourself, you discover the true power of divine intervention. Listen to me, because I want you to hear this and let it sink deep into your soul. You have been running around trying to explain yourself, justify your choices, defend your dreams, and prove your worth to people who will never understand. But tonight, I am telling you, your next level does not need your voice, your validation, or your permission. Your next level needs your silence, your restraint, and your faith. Stop talking to people who are not on your side. Stop arguing with spirits that cannot change. Stop defending what God himself is already handling. Silence is not absence. Silence is power. Silence is preparation. Silence is strategy. Silence is the signal that you are no longer controlled by the noise of the world, but by the purpose of God. In 2026, the loudest person in the room will not be the one who shouts. They will be the one who waits, who listens, who acts with divine precision. So I challenge you tonight, stop leaking your power through your mouth. Stop chasing approval. Stop explaining your vision. Let your silence speak louder than your struggle ever did. Because when you master the art of silence, you do not just survive, you ascend. And your enemies, they will never see you coming. That is the power. That is your season. That is your victory.